So then, after all the COVID delays and controversies over streaming platforms and theatrical releases, Wonder Woman 1984 is finally here. Does it deliver on all the hype and anticipation? Or is it a further disappointment within the DC cinematic universe? Let's find out in this review. Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and we are now going to talk about Wonder Woman 1984, and this will be my non-spoiler review of the sequel to the massively successful 2017 superhero adventure. The sequel was recently released in theatres internationally, and a week later it will be released simultaneously in US theatres alongside the HBO Max streaming platform, and this has caused massive controversy amongst the entertainment news, and I will leave various links to the description of this video where I've commented at length in terms of this development and its release structure of the movie. The sequel of course stars Gal Gadot returning in the role as Diana Prince, also Kristen Wiig, Pedro Pascal and Chris Pine, and is directed by Patty Jenkins, who also directed the 2017 original movie. The setup and story is that we continue the adventures of Diana Prince as the Amazonian superheroine from Themyscira, who now finds herself fully resided in the 1980s era, and we see her fully settled in her life as Diana Prince, whilst at the same time performing many superhero duties, saving people, rounding up criminals and thieves, and trying to hide her identity and lead a normal life in this new decade as well. We are introduced to Barbara Ann Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig, who has just got a new job in the same archaeological museum as Diana, and the two bond together very well. Barbara is very envious of Diana's more esteemed confidence and looks. Shortly after, we are also introduced to Maxwell Lord, played by Pedro Pascal, a businessman and a TV personality. We later find out that his true status is not quite as what it seems as presented on the television screens, and we delve later on into his own motivations and ambitions. All three characters' stories are linked together by an ancient artifact, which over the course of the story has huge ramifications for all three involved. In terms of the plot and story, that's really as far as I can go without going into spoilers, and I will also produce a spoiler review which I will release probably a week or so after this review here. So then, avoiding spoilers, we will then talk about the good points and bad points of Wonder Woman 84. So overall, what's good? What's good about Wonder Woman 1984? Like its predecessor, Wonder Woman 1984 for the most part is a vivid, visually energized, colourful, escapist superhero adventure. We praise Patty Jenkins very much with the first film for embracing more the comic book spirit and tone and deviating away from the grim, dark grittiness set by Zack Snyder's previous films within the DCEU, and with this movie she does it again here. This movie is great to look at, and it has that bright, optimistic tone and outlandish comic book spirit that I think we should be looking to stick more towards when we're showcasing these superhero iconic properties. This is highlighted very much in the first two opening sequences, which from an action point of view are probably the two best scenes of the film, showcasing again that great colourful contrast and visual splendour. The film does a wonderful job in showcasing Wonder Woman and all of her powers and fighting abilities, with some great comic book moments, really embracing how powerful she is. For me, I think this is the best she's been visualised throughout the whole movies, in terms of the original and also Batman vs Superman and Justice League. I love it when we see these truly iconic superheroes at the full extent of their powers. I think it's always best to embrace the full force and potential of these superheroes, particularly the DC superheroes, and everything that you've seen from the trailers is true within this movie. All of these great visual scenes we see of Wonder Woman jumping, leaping, running, using the lasso of truth, fighting, fending off bullets. This is how you do it. This is how you really embrace that source material and visualize and show these heroes at their true peak of their powers. I actually feel that if we look at the overall DCU movies that Wonder Woman has been slightly nerfed in what she can do and the full-on abilities, and here this sequel really corrects that to a point. I just love all of the great visual points that we see throughout the movie, and it works very well in terms of the cinematography and the musical score, and we do such a great job in showing Wonder Woman truly powerful. Gal Gadot continues to be consistently good and perfectly acceptable and comfortable within her role as Wonder Woman. She looks fabulous and beautiful in every shot we see her, where we see her in the various costumes and looks throughout, whether it's attended meetings or parties or in the Wonder Woman costume. And it's not spoilerific to say we see her later on in the Golden Eagle version of the character, and she looks great and fabulous throughout. Kristen Wiig is actually very good and very likeable as Barbara, who in the beginning and certainly through the 2/3 of the movie is a very appealable character. She has very good scenes with Gal Gadot when we look at Barbara, and we see, as I mentioned before, she looks up to Diana, and we get good time with these characters talking together and exchanging their life stories. And Barbara's progression is handled very well for the first 2/3 of the movie. Pedro Pascal certainly makes a big screen impression as Maxwell Lord, who wants to elevate himself, and we see throughout the story that he's a bit of a con man, and over the course of the plot we see him get more corrupted and more unhinged as he pursues his own ambitions. And Pedro Pascal's performance, it really ranges from very charismatic and lively, but at times I think later on, particularly in the third act, it gets a bit over the top and a bit unbalanced. Chris Pine also returns, and without spoiling anything, again, he has a great dynamic and chemistry with Gal Gadot. The filmmakers obviously realised that his chemistry with Gal Gadot was one of the best things about the first movie, really created that foundation from which it could build on, so it's really no surprise that they've brought him back into the fold for this sequel. They have great scenes together, particularly again when you look at the trailer when they're in the invisible plane, and also when we see throughout the story where Steve is adjusting to life within the 1980s, and we see him commenting on various aspects and objects within the era. And I think Chris Pine helps Gal Gadot to feel more comfortable in her role as Wonder Woman, and it shows again what a versatile actor I believe Chris Pine is. Hans Zimmer's music and score is really of that high caliber that we come to expect from him for many years now. I've commented many times in previous reviews of movies that I regard Hans Zimmer as really the top current composer for the modern day blockbuster. We've seen him compose many scores for so many superhero movies, but if we concentrate particularly on the DCEU movies, once again with the Dark Knight trilogy and Man of Steel, he just knows how to elevate these great moments and scenes, giving that sense of wonder and gravitas. And Wonder Woman 1984 has some fantastic sequences which I believe are further elevated by Hans Zimmer's musical score. In terms of the story itself, it moves at a very leisurely pace for the first 2/3 of the movie. Now, some may feel that the story maybe lacks a certain momentum and a certain thrill. Maybe it doesn't have quite those superhero antics that we expect, but I think this is a compliment to Patty Jenkins in that she knows how to handle character, and she makes sure that over the course of the story each character gets a good amount of time to make an impression, and she does very well to build these characters. The whole optimistic tone and colour and feel of this movie is once again showing Patty Jenkins how she's far more adept and skillful than the likes of Zack Snyder in handling these characters, and I honestly feel she would have made a far more better choice for Man of Steel. She would have presented a far more optimistic and brighter tone that is far more appropriate to the character, and I think Patty Jenkins has a great and firm understanding of Wonder Woman, her role, what she means, the concept and the context of the character, and the right tone, and she really adheres the right spirit and flavour that the character deserves. Now, we're just going to talk about some of the bad points within the movie, and I do have a couple of issues with it. Now, I think ultimately it struggles to handle all of its plots and narratives and find a perfect balance and synergy between them. The three characters at times feel disconnected. In the beginning of the film, Diana feels actually the least interesting character of the story. I think this is primarily because the film starts off and we never get a chance to fully understand how Diana has integrated herself into this society. We see that she's very much of a lonely presence. She doesn't strive to build any connection or relationships with anybody, and if you remember, she's been on this side of the planet now since the 1940s, so you're trying to tell us that she hasn't build any bridges with anybody at all. She's just been on her own, and I think it lessens any particular personality within the character. There are several times throughout the story that each of the three characters, Diana, Maxwell Lord and Barbara, all feel less important throughout as the story shifts in between its different narratives. Barbara especially feels less important in the final third as we focus a lot more on Maxwell Lord, and I think this is again a deficiency within the film in failing to juggle all of its plot dynamics together. Now for me, the biggest flaw is the film's intention to clearly take on bigger themes and messages concerning the time period it's in. Now don't get me wrong here, I will always support a movie, especially a superhero movie, that wants to take on deeper themes and messages. If you look at the Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, that's what made those films so special, because there was a deeper subject matter and multi-layer to the story that it was trying to tell. Now Wonder Woman 1984 tries to do this, for which I will credit it, but unfortunately I think it takes on such big ideas and concepts and it doesn't follow them through. In fact, for 2/3 of the movies we don't get these concepts as we concentrate more on the characters, but then in the last third it really shoehorns these bigger themes, ideas into the story, and I think as a result it feels very messy and very compressed and overcrowded. We get many hints and suggestions on the social commentary, politics, government upheaval, potential bribery and corruption, but none of these concepts are really followed through properly. They're brought in late in the game, and I think the film suffers as a result because of it. There's a certain message throughout the movie concerning people's desires and what they hope and dream for, and the potential ramifications and implications of having those desires. The idea has a very dystopian and negative feel towards it, and I think this goes against the very bright and optimistic tone that the film set out for, particularly in the first 2/3 of the story. Another big disappointment for me was the visualization of Cheetah. Now this isn't spoilerific because we all know that she makes an appearance in this movie through the various plot synopsis and also the trailers that we saw. And this is a very sore point when I saw those trailers, because I wasn't convinced by the CGI rendition of the character, so I was hoping for an improvement when I came to see the movie, and sadly we don't really get that. Her whole transformation and the reason for it doesn't really bear much credibility. I didn't really see the importance of the transformation, and it really lacked an impact when it happens and she emerges on screen. This is a particular low point for me because I was very much looking forward to seeing Cheetah on screen, because if you're into your comic book mythology, or you know the lore, or you're a Wonder Woman fan, you'll know that Cheetah is probably her most famous iconic villain, and I just wasn't very impressed with the way that this character was represented on screen. When we do get the encounter between Wonder Woman and Cheetah, it feels very forced and short-changed and irrelevant at this point when it happens within the movie, and I think it's sad, and I think it could have done a better job in developing the final emergence and transformation of Cheetah. And I just feel if you're a fan of the Wonder Woman character, you may be disappointed in how this character has been represented. So if I had to give an overall score for Wonder Woman 1984, I would give it a 7.1 out of 10. It's probably on par with the first original. For most parts of the movie, I think maybe perhaps slightly superior in the last third. I did prefer the way that the movie rounded off its story in this movie, and it's a nice overall ending. I think there are some spectacular and visually stunning shots, and again it presents that more brighter, optimistic tone, that comic book spirit and adventure that we really should see in terms of the DC heroes for the most part. And I think Patty Jenkins has very much of a respect and a love for the character, and she's supported very well by Gal Gadot, who continues to do a very competent interpretation of the character. And whilst it does want to focus on bigger themes and ideas, I just feel the execution of these themes and concept wasn't handled very well and ended up messing up the narrative and certain parts of the characters and the way that the storylines were handled really in the last thread. I think that's what brought this movie down a bit, and I think at a runtime at 2.5 hours, I think there's a failure there in presenting these concepts and ideas which should have been brought on earlier on within the movie. So those are my overall thoughts and review of Wonder Woman 1984. As I mentioned before, I will work on shortly on a spoiler review, and I will release that probably within the next week or so. If you've managed to see Wonder Woman 1984, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Tell me what you think worked well within the movie and didn't work as well within the movie. How do you think it compares to the 2017 original? Do you think it's superior or do you think it's inferior? What do you think goes ahead for the Wonder Woman movie in terms of a franchise? Did you see enough within this movie to warrant a third film? And do you think there are certain improvements to be made from this sequel, and what direction do you feel it should take going into the third film as well? And also, how do you think it compares to the other DCU movies? Where would you rank it in terms of hierarchy and quality? Do you think it's in the upper echelon, or do you think it's actually one of the least impressive films within the DCU? And where do you think the DCU can go forward following the events of this movie? So that's it for now on my non-spoiler review of Wonder Woman 1984. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Spoiler review to come shortly, but that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.